Welcome to the Letters to Mahakala podcast. Today I'm reading from the Letters to Mahakala, chapter 18, The Cobra Kid. One of the problems of Johnny from the original Karate Kid is that in his youthfulness, he mistakes power for martial wisdom. However, nobody in the original movie bleeds this power more than Sensei Kreese. Kreese is an amalgamation of every power-drunk manager of the old martial trade. He manages by inflicting violence upon others and anything else that can vault the name of Cobra Kai higher than the rest. In terms of compassion, he's confused, for he admires the heartless. His voice hides the inner psychosis, and his actions speak of a detachment masquerading as wisdom. Sweep the leg, Kreese says. Johnny does. What ensues is movie history. Let's pick the situation up with future Johnny Lawrence, who now wallows in his perpetual disaster. Because Cobra Kai had no room for a loser, Johnny finds himself years later detached from his life, allowing a beer buzz paradise to masquerade for a life that passed him by years ago. And like my own teacher, who could not in the end decide the difference between morality and power, Kreese finds his own life in disarray, but not nearly as vivid as Johnny's. Kreese is the insulted tyrant, and Johnny is the tragic nobility who takes the pain, or samsara, head on. Teachers like Kreese never see more than 6 feet down the road, which pretty much is why their students usually fail marvelously. But then again, we should look at the failure and ask what lessons were lost in the gutting of Johnny's spirit. Justice is the first concept back for review. This is the morality that Chris Hedges spends so much time bonking us on our heads with. Where was the morality in sending a hopeful like Johnny to the wreck of a life? Kreese didn't flinch, but Kreese is a first-class nihilist taught by the dark corners of the Vietnam War that human life is both fragile, tragic, and meaningless. It's his code. And so mercy and politeness can hit the streets because Kreese's brand of sincerity is shared only by a sharp knife on a cold morning. And loyalty? Are you kidding me? It's Kreese, for goodness sakes. His nihilistic urge is the only thing he is truly loyal to in the end. In closing, many folks mistake his poise for self-control. With so many inhuman gears churning in his head, a fake stoicism is what keeps him from lashing out too many times for people to notice. Johnny is Gung Gong, for he rises up from his own ashes with a golden radiance, awakening to the weak glimmer of Cobra Kai's slumbering might. But therein is the irony. We expect Johnny to follow Kreese's path, and it's not like he didn't try, but I'll stop short of a spoiler. Mercy and loyalty become Johnny's later regard for humanity, which is off-putting to sharks like Kreese. In my own tradition of White Crane, there is the tradition of 4 modes: cruelty, evasion, invasiveness, and penetration. Now, at first glance, with the exception of the first, the 3 can be easily read as a type of Dzogchen Dodgao, pointing of the way, such that evasion of your own bitter demons via an invasive program of mantra, or simply noting the prime existence of Rigpa, leads to the penetration of the actual, and not just a base level of mere violence. In terms of cruelty, well, let me say, I cannot express how strongly this makes me sour. For in this art, supposedly locked up in a Tibetan Buddhist temple somewhere, it's not a mistaken interpretation at all. But that's first level thinking. If we boot this upstairs, cruelty becomes something quite different. It becomes something like a tantric violence, a gleaming gum gong level of becoming via, let's say, the deity Vajrapani, psychologically an eater of samsara and generator of nirvana. In his wrathful essence, Vajrapani's job is to scare us out of dualism and directly into non-dual state. The reading is so total that I feel this cruelty has been misread. And if we allow this misreading in terms of bringing the concept into the hollowed space of morality, we just might have a Tibetan influence on White Crane after all. But then again, that's a pretty tall order. If, as Hedges says, the measure of civilization is its compassion, then the mighty Cobra Kai versus Miyagi-Do fight in the high school telegraphs back to us what the greater majority desire: conflict. Conflict, like in war and dramas, both staged and caged, puts asses in the seats like nothing else. Recently, USA Today's sports section touts that 80 million was earned by a pay-per-view show on the recent Tyson versus Roy Jones exhibition fight. And according to Sportskida, Tyson will pocket a cool million from that event. It's not too shabby at all, right? But that takes us back to the question: what lessons of compassion does the average American and the world at large as well learn from these two events and with Cobra Kai? And that's a cool meal per season for the principal actors. As a viewer of Cobra Kai, all I can say is this: if there was a Buddhist lesson during the high school Rumble episode, I missed it. However, I can say that Johnny's later actions with his top student, Miguel, who was crippled in the melee, did show a type of tough dojo love. So I will cut that episode some slack. Perhaps, and I mean perhaps, Johnny's transformation at the end of the story arc is as close to compassion as we will ever get as a civilization of constant viewers. I could work with that, for it's a damn sight better than nothing. As Chris Hedges surmises, it's works like Conrad's The Heart of Darkness that are to be used as examples of what heartless empire gets us. Also, works like Conrad's are to be used to further, quote, examine our own imperial darkness, end quote. The darkness of self, the instrument of self, we call empire, whether that be a nation, school, or egregious thought, or an advertising campaign. In closing, Cobra Kai is a lesson about the rumbles that martially inspired clubs, both fictional and actual, used to attract followers. And for all the hype spewed about Shaolin monks in our century, never once have I heard of them retreating into caves like Bodhidharma did, supposedly, in order to do something like a Yang Ti exercise. If they do, then I need you, the reader, to inspire me to learn further. What I see are exercises done in pride, quite often with little to no commentary on true Buddhist meditation practice. As long as we are willing to pay for the pay-per-view view programming as if it were bread and circuses, then the cultural enlightenment is still far off. Thank you for listening. This has been the Letters to Mahakala podcast. I will see you next time.